So it's been quite a while since we've done underused weapons on my channel, and I was like, I think the time has come where I've got a weapon that actually can be a really awesome underused weapons episode, and that's one with the RPK. Because I was actually working on a showdown with the RPK, because I know one of my subscribers has been requesting a RPK versus QBB showdown for the longest time, and I was working on it. And I was like, man, both of these weapons are really underused, and it's kind of like, well, the QBB has had an underused weapons episode, and the RPK hasn't, so I feel like it would be better suited to, oh, a nice little three-piece there. It'd be better suited to do the RPK and underused weapons, kind of talk about why it's underused, maybe some of the reasons why people aren't using it over some of the other choices out there, which is really what underused weapons is all about. It's about showcasing a weapon that maybe doesn't get the respect it deserves. And maybe talk about some of the reasons why people just don't use it. And I think the RPK is a really good candidate for that. And a little bit about the loadout I'm using. I am using the bipod. I tend to run the bipod, because there's really not a lot of good choices out there in that slot. And it's always nice to have the bipod as an option if you need it, because it comes in handy. It comes in handy quite often, actually. I actually find myself relying on it a lot. But I'm also using flash suppressor, and you're probably scratching your head at this point. Flash suppressor, well, why not extended mags? Well, for one, during these two videos, I actually hadn't unlocked extended mags yet, so I was like, okay, what is a good alternative to extended mags? And flash suppressor was definitely a good alternative because it seems to kick back the recoil a little bit. I mean, the recoil on this thing is already just pretty much meaningless. And I mean, I know a lot of people look at the bipod and it's like, well, you never want to use the bipod with, flash suppressor because the bipod basically takes away all the recoil to begin with. You're not really getting much added benefit, but being that I didn't have extended mags unlocked, I felt like the flash suppressor really just made this thing a really awesome, long range LMG. I don't know what it was about it. I could pick people off when firing from the shoulder much easier with the flash suppressor. So it is pretty interesting to use this thing with flash suppressor. Now, why don't people use this over, let's say, the M27? The M27 and the RPK are the two starter support class weapons. They're the Russian and the American LMGs in the game, and they're magazine fed. They're not like the belt feds. They have quicker reloads than the belt feds, but you trade off those 200 round magazines, or whatever you want to call them, belts, for these. And that was probably the dumbest play in my Battlefield history, because I did expect to die there, but for some reason I lived, and I killed myself with a nade. So that was a tad embarrassing. Part of me was like, man, I should cut that out, but I also thought it was kind of funny, so I was like, we'll leave it in there, because it was a big swing of events, and we did end up winning that game, by the way, in case you were wondering. But I'm going to showcase this one right here just so you guys can see some bipod usage. But like I was saying, if you compare it to the M27 shoots 750 rounds per minute. The RPK shoots 700 rounds per minute. Not a huge difference, but that 50 rounds can help the M27 shoot, compete with the M16, because that tends to be the weapon you run into most. Whereas the RPK, it shoots 100 rounds per minute slower than the M16, so it's at a sizable disadvantage. And I think the one weapon that I always like to compare these two to is the AK-74M and the M16, because the M27 is like the M16, the AK-74M is like the RPK-74M. So pretty easy to make those comparisons since they're the two starters. And honestly, this is like a big AK-74M. I mean, the recoil pattern, if you've got a lot of kills with the AK-74M, you'll know how the recoil kind of works on this. It feels very much the same. I don't really have much problem with this because I think I have almost 700 kills with the AK-74, so I'm pretty used to this platform, the recoil pattern, and I actually like it. So the RPK surprised me. I am using flash suppressor like I mentioned, so maybe that skewed the recoil feel for me just a little bit, but I never felt like I was at a disadvantage when using the RPK. I actually had a pretty solid time out there using it. So although it does kind of lag behind some of the other LMG choices out there, I can see why people might like to use this. I mean, it's a very controllable weapon. I can see it being, really useful on console, because I know a lot of you guys leave comments on my videos saying, Jake, it's a lot harder to control recoil on console. That's why certain weapons are used more on console than they are on PC. But I mean, if you're good at controlling recoil on PC, you're going to find this thing to have absolutely no recoil. And if you struggle with recoil control on the controller on like Xbox or PS3, you're going to find that this is really, really easy to control. And to confirm what I'm actually saying, I actually hopped on the Xbox last night and fooled around a little bit with the RPK, and yes, it is really easy to control it with a controller. So I know a lot of you guys don't want me to just, talk about the PC side of things. I definitely think the RPK can be useful on the console if you have a hard time controlling recoil of some of those other LMGs out there. So that's what this thing excels in, being very controllable, being very good at longer ranges. You know, like right there's a good example of just how quickly you can kill someone. But the M27 does compete a little bit better, at least in my eyes, with the assault rifles. So you do give up a little bit of the fire rate, you know, the reload speed, when you switch from the M27 to the RPK. And the reason why I'm comparing these two, because they are probably the two that, you know, get compared the most often, like I mentioned earlier. So let me know what you guys think. How come you don't use the RPK? What do you think is the biggest disadvantage to it? And I will see you guys next time. Peace.